So, you know that feeling, right? You're in a high-stakes meeting? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a really critical presentation. Or that job interview. You're absolutely in the flow, making a crucial point, and then just nothing. A complete blank void. That silence which felt fine a second ago, suddenly it's just this deafening roar inside your head, and your internal monologue is screaming, oh no, I've lost my train of thought. It's that moment of just pure, cold dread horror. And, if you're navigating this in a second language, that fear, well, it can feel amplified, like tenfold. But here's the thing. What if that moment, that panic, could actually be transformed? What if, instead of signaling, I don't know, incompetence, it became a genuine opportunity, a chance to demonstrate your confidence, your self-awareness, even your control? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging right into the POISE protocol, mastering professional communication recovery. We've pulled key insights from a really definitive guide on this exact topic. And our mission today, it's to arm you with much more than just like a list of phrases to say. We're actually going to dissect the psychology behind these blanks, these freezes. Then we'll give you a powerful recovery toolkit. And finally, explore some really robust preventative strategies.
Exactly. And by the end of this deep dive, the goal is for you to have the actual linguistic tools, yes, but also the mental framework. You'll be able to turn one of communication's most, well, unnerving moments into a showcase of grace, authority, and unshakable professionalism. It's really about shifting from just reacting in panic to actually commanding the moment. Okay, so let's start by deconstructing this brain freeze thing. What's really crucial to get right off the bat is that losing your train of thought, it isn't some kind of character flaw. It's not a sign you're not smart. It is a predictable physiological and psychological response. It's rooted in how our brains handle pressure, information overload, and, yeah, anxiety. Understanding the why it happens is honestly the first step to mastering the how to deal with it.
That makes so much sense. And I like the analogy of thinking about your brain's working memory, like the RAM in a computer. It's that mental scratch pad, right? The one
Yeah.
you use for all the immediate tasks. And wow, in a professional setting, that working memory is juggling just an incredible number of variables all at once. You've got your core message, the logical structure, specific words, grammar, how the audience is reacting, your own tone, your posture, timing. And like you said, if you're a non-native speaker, there's that constant extra layer of processing a second language. That's a lot of plates to spin.
It absolutely is. So a brain freeze is often just that your system crashing, your working memory literally gets overloaded. And to prevent a total shutdown, it momentarily drops a process. And usually that's the what comes next part of your verbal stream. It's really a failure of cognitive bandwidth, not of reflection on your intelligence at all.
Right. And then comes that horrible immediate realization. Oh no, I've gone blank. And the internal panic just starts screaming.
And that's exactly where your brain's ancient threat detection center kicks in. It's called the amygdala. It perceives the social risk, looking foolish as a genuine threat, almost like seeing a predator back in the day. This triggers a kind of subtle fight or flight response. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. Your heart rate might go up, breathing gets shallow, and critically, mental resources get diverted away from the logical thinking part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. So this causes a temporary cognitive shutdown and makes clear thought even harder, and you can spiral into this vicious cycle. The absolute key to recovery is breaking that cycle before it really takes hold.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about our prep habits? It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but you mentioned trying to memorize a full script can actually make you more likely to lose your place. Why is that?
Yeah, it seems odd, doesn't it? But it creates this really fragile linear chain of ideas in your head. If just one single link in that chain breaks, maybe from a distraction, someone asks a question, or just a momentary memory lapse, the entire rest of the chain can just disappear. You literally don't know how to get to point D if you haven't just said point C, and point C has vanished into thin air. Contrast that with truly fluent, confident speakers. They generally don't rely on a rigid script. They operate from a more flexible structure. Think of it like key ideas or islands of thought. They know their main points, their islands, and they can improvise the exact wording, the path between them. It makes their whole system far more robust, much more resilient to disruption.
Interesting. So beyond the psychological side, are there other factors, like physical things?
Oh, absolutely. Physical and environmental elements definitely contribute. Lack of sleep, for instance, that significantly reduces your working memory capacity. It makes sense, right? Being dehydrated or having low blood sugar can also slow your brain's processing speed. Your brain needs fuel. And even simple distractions, an unexpected noise, a phone notification buzzing, that can be enough to momentarily derail your cognitive process when you're already under load.
Okay, so if we understand these root causes, the overloaded memory, the amygdala hijack, the script issue, even lack of sleep, we can actually reframe the whole experience. Losing your train of thought isn't some personal failing. It's just, well, it's a predictable cognitive event. And like any predictable event, you can absolutely prepare a professional and, importantly, an effective response. Which I guess brings us neatly to your recovery toolkit. All right, let's dive into these 5 specific really powerful phrases. These form the core of what we're calling the poise protocol. We're going to explore not just what to say, but critically, how to say it and why each one actually works. Okay, first up, this one's kind of the gold standard, maybe the most direct. Let me just take a moment to collect my thoughts. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly direct, honest, and when delivered right, really confident. The core meaning is basically, okay, I've momentarily lost my place here, and I'm choosing to pause deliberately to find it.
Exactly. This phrase is so effective because, first, you're taking ownership of that silence. You're not letting it own you. Second, it signals self-awareness and confidence, not panic. Third, it buys you those crucial 5, maybe 10 seconds for your prefrontal cortex, that thinking brain, to get back online and for your working memory to sort of re-engage. And importantly, your audience relaxes. You've managed their expectation. They know what's happening. Now, delivery is everything here. You need to say it slowly, deliberately. A calm, even tone. Maintain eye contact initially. Then it's okay to briefly break it, maybe look up or to the side like you're searching memory banks, or glance down at your notes briefly. Take a visible, calming breath. That really helps signal control. What you absolutely want to avoid is saying it with a panicked or high-pitched voice, or fidgeting or looking terrified. It needs to feel like a professional, thoughtful pause, not a meltdown.
Right. I can totally see using this during, say, a complex explanation in a big presentation. Or maybe when giving detailed updates in a team meeting, or even when you get hit with a really complex question and you need a second to structure a good answer. You could also vary it slightly, couldn't you? Like, allow me a moment to gather my thoughts, which sounds a bit more formal. Or even something like, I want to make sure I phrase this next point correctly. Let me take just a second to consider it. That frames it as wanting precision, which is very professional. Imagine you're talking Q2 marketing analytics, moving on to user focus groups, and suddenly blank. Instead of freezing, you calmly say, let me just take a moment to collect my thoughts. Take that breath. Then smoothly continue with your insights about, say, the branding message and user experience disconnect. That's real poise, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's turning a potential disaster into a demonstration of control.
Okay, phrase number 2 for the toolkit. Let me rephrase that. Or its close cousin. Let me put that another way. Beck. This feels more like a strategic reset, doesn't it? A kind of elegant tool for when you realize your words aren't quite landing right, or you've maybe started down a confusing path.
Yes, exactly. What's really powerful here is that you are making a proactive choice. It doesn't feel like you're reacting to a blank space in your head. It buys you maybe 2 or 3 crucial seconds to reformulate your thought, to find a clearer way. And importantly, it puts the focus on the audience. I'm doing this for your benefit. That makes you seem thoughtful and empathetic. You're basically telling them, hey, disregard that slightly fumbled sentence I just started. I've got a better way, and giving yourself a fresh start. For delivery, aim for a natural conversational pace. Maybe a slightly brighter, more helpful tone than the previous phrase. A subtle head tilt or a simple hand gesture can signal the shift effectively. And make sure to reestablish direct eye contact to re-engage them. One caveat: avoid using this after a really long, awkward silence. It works best most immediately after you stumble over a phrase or realize you're being unclear. And probably don't use it, 5 times in the same talk. That could make you sound a bit unsure.
Got it. So perfect for when you start a sentence you realize you can't finish grammatically, or when an explanation starts getting way too complex, or maybe you're just rambling a bit, or you used a word not quite correctly. Simple variations could be just, let me say that again, straightforward. Or for a more advanced, maybe collaborative feel, actually a better way to think of this is, or perhaps I can frame that more clearly. So picture this. Team meeting. You're starting a super technical explanation about software integration API issues. You look around, see confused faces, and realize, okay, this isn't working. You smoothly say, you know what, let me rephrase that. Pause it briefly, then simplify it. Essentially, the old system and the new system. They just aren't talking to each other fast enough right now. Boom. You just transformed a potentially confusing moment into one of real clarity.
Precisely. It's about redirecting for clarity.
Okay, next up, our third phrase. This one feels like more of a specialist tool for a very specific kind of blank. The exact word figure name is on the tip of my tongue. Give me just one moment. So this isn't for when your whole train of thought derails, right? It's specifically for when a single crucial piece of data, a name, a number, a term, has just momentarily escaped you.
Exactly right. This phrase is highly effective because it immediately does something important. It narrates the problem. You're clearly communicating, look, 99% of my thought process is intact here. I'm just having a tiny momentary retrieval issue. It's like a minor brain glitch, not some fundamental knowledge gap. And this is incredibly relatable. Everyone in your audience has had that tip of the tongue feeling. It actually makes you more human. Plus, it gives your brain a very specific target to search for, which can sometimes help retrieve the information. Delivery-wise, aim for a natural pace, maybe even slightly faster, as if you're actively searching your mental files. Your tone should be focused, maybe with just a touch of self-frustration, but still confident that the information is there. Looking away or up briefly, perfectly acceptable. That's a classic thinking pose. Even a light snap of the fingers can reinforce that it's right there, feeling. Just be sure, as you said, not to use this for a general loss of thought. It's only for that single missing detail. And don't spend more than, say, 5 or 10 seconds visibly searching. If it doesn't come, have a backup plan, move on, or promise to follow up with the exact detail later.
Okay, so super useful. When you forget a specific name, a statistic, maybe a date, or a technical term you know. I can see this being great in a Q&A session where precise data might be expected. Or, definitely, in a job interview, recalling a project name or a specific result you achieved. You might say something simple like, oh, what's the word? It'll come to me in a second. That's quite direct. Or maybe more formally, I seem to be drawing a blank on this specific statistic for just a moment. I can find it for you right after this if you'd like. Offering the follow-up is key there. And for a really advanced move, you could even confidently move past the missing detail while promising to return, like, the name of the lead researcher is escaping me for a moment, apologies, but his work back in 2022 was absolutely seminal. The key finding was actually. Then you carry on with the substance. Let's take that job interview example. You're describing leading the Phoenix initiative and how you decreased onboarding time significantly, but you blank on the exact client satisfaction score improvement. You say the exact score improvement figure is right on the tip of my tongue. Give me just one moment. Yes, it was a 15-point improvement. Wow. You just went from potentially flustered to sounding incredibly detailed and precise.
Exactly. You flagged the temporary glitch, but immediately recovered with the data. Very strong.
All right, phrase number 4. This one feels advanced, definitely more interactive. It involves turning to the audience. Actually, that brings me to an interesting question for you, or maybe before I continue, what are your initial thoughts on that point? This sounds like a really masterful way to turn your own momentary blank into a chance for collaborative engagement. Is that the idea?
That's precisely the idea. This strategy works so powerfully for a few reasons. First, it immediately shifts the cognitive load. Phew. The pressure's off you for a second, giving your brain vital time to regroup while they think. Second, audiences genuinely appreciate being involved. It boosts engagement significantly. People like sharing their thoughts. Third, their response can often provide you with a new anchor point, something they say might jog your memory or give you a natural transition to your next point. And finally, it projects incredible confidence. Deliberately handing the floor over suggests you're a skilled facilitator, not someone who's lost. Now, for delivery. Use an open, inviting pace. Your tone needs to be genuinely curious, not like you're desperately fishing for help. Maintain an open posture. Maybe use an open-handed gesture towards the audience. Scan the room, make eye contact, and really nod intently as they respond. Show you're listening. This is obviously best suited for interactive settings, workshops, training sessions, internal team meetings, maybe after making a significant point but feeling unsure where to go next. Probably not the best choice for very formal, one-way keynote speeches where interaction isn't really expected. And be careful not to ask a question that's too complex or difficult, otherwise you might just get another awkward silence.
Right, good point. So simpler variations could be just, what does everyone think about that? Very open, or more specific. Before I move on to the implementation phase, does anyone have any immediate concerns about the strategy I've just outlined? That directs their thinking. And for a really advanced facilitative approach, you could even address a specific person if you know the group. Sarah, I know your team handles a lot of this on the ground. From your perspective, what's the biggest challenge you see with that approach? Wow, that's smooth. So picture yourself in a workshop. You're discussing how new CRM software streamlines communication, creates that single source of truth. And you trail off. Blank. Instead of freezing, you smoothly turn to the group with,
Actually, that brings me to an interesting question for all of you. Thinking about your daily tasks, what's the biggest potential time saving you see from having a truly centralized database? You listen intently to a team member's thoughtful response, nod, and then seamlessly connect it back. That's a great point about report generation. And that saved time, of course, can then be reallocated to, and you're back on track. Truly brilliant if you can pull it off.
It really is. It turns a potential negative into a collaborative positive.
Okay, finally, phrase 5. This feels like the ultimate safety net. I seem to have lost my train of thought for a moment. To get us back on track, the last point I was making was, hey, this sounds like it combines the honesty of phrase 1, let me collect my thoughts, with a kind of collaborative approach to finding your place again.
Yes, that's a perfect way to put it. This phrase essentially creates a shared task. By verbally retracing your steps out loud, you're not just helping your brain find the path again, but you're also bringing the audience along with you. They know exactly where you are in the logic. It uses a really powerful psychological anchor, which is your last successfully delivered point. That provides a solid foundation, a known place to rebuild your thought from. This approach is incredibly grounding, especially if you're feeling genuinely lost. It offers a clear procedure, something concrete to do instead of just standing there in panicked silence. Delivery here. Aim for a calm, measured pace. The first part, I seem to have lost my train of thought, can have just a touch of honest self-deprecation, which is relatable. But the second part, to get us back on track, the last point was that should be brighter, more energetic, signal that you're moving back into action. You could even use a subtle hand gesture, like a little rewind motion, as you mentioned the last point, and absolutely glance at your notes or the screen if you need to at this stage. That's fine. The key is just to avoid sounding panicked or overly apologetic. State it as a simple fact. And, crucially, don't forget to actually state that last point clearly. The recap is the essential part of this technique.
All right, the recap is the springboard. So this safety net is invaluable when maybe a simple pause just isn't enough, when you're feeling genuinely lost, or in really complex presentations where the logical sequence is absolutely critical, or maybe if you've been interrupted and you're struggling to find your way back into the flow. An informal variation for, say, an internal meeting could be, sorry guys, I lost my place for a second. What was I just saying?
Yeah.
More casual. For a standard professional setting, forgive me, my mind has gone blank for a second. The point I was just finishing was clear and polite. And I love this masterful version you mentioned that frames the recap almost like a deliberate rhetorical device. Let's just pause there for 1 second. I want to make sure the link to the next point is perfectly clear. We've just established X. Ah, yes, which logically leads us directly to Y. That's turning recovery into rhetoric. So, final example. Formal presentation. You're discussing how team decentralization increases autonomous decision-making. And then, complete blank. Total void. You take a breath. Use the phrase.
I seem to have lost my train of thought for a moment. To get us back on track, the last point I was making was about how decentralization fosters that autonomous decision-making. And then, having anchored yourself, you make the connection. And it's precisely that autonomy, of course, that is key to fostering innovation, which brings me to my next slide. Seamless. Absolutely seamless.
It really can be with practice. It's about
Right.
having the procedure ready.
Okay, so recovering gracefully is, without a doubt, a crucial skill to have in your back pocket. But, minimizing the need to recover in the first place, that feels even better. True professionalism, I guess, involved that rigorous preparation designed to prevent these mental blanks before they even happen.
Exactly. So how do we shift from just recovery to actual prevention? Well, first big one, you have got to abandon the full script. As we discussed earlier, relying on a word-for-word script is just too fragile. It sets you up for failure if one link breaks. Instead, the recommendation is to prepare your talk as a series of those islands we mentioned, or key ideas. Your notes shouldn't be paragraphs. They should be maybe a handful of keywords, a powerful statistic you need to quote, or key questions you plan to address, ideally on a single page or just a few small cue cards. This kind of structure is just inherently more robust because if you forget a specific transition between points, you can simply look at your notes, see the next island, and move directly there without completely derailing.
Right. It's like your notes aren't a rigid railway track. They're a map showing the key islands you need to visit. You can take slightly different rides between them. So an example of effective island notes might look like problem, Q3 sales dip, 15% cause, competitor X launch, solution 1, loyalty program, need data. Solution 2, target ad spend, which demographic Y, next steps, A/B test by Friday. See, just keywords and triggers, you know the 5 islands you need to hit. Okay, what else helps prevent the freeze? You mentioned the power of the opening and closing.
Yes, this is huge. You should absolutely aim to have your opening sentence or two and your closing sentence or two memorized cold. Like absolutely word perfect. Why? Well, a strong, confident opening helps you power through that initial wave of anxiety that often hits when you start speaking. It builds momentum right away. And a strong, confident closing ensures you end with impact and power. That's often what the audience remembers most vividly. It leaves a lasting positive impression, even if you stumbled slightly in the middle.
Makes sense. Nail the start, nail the finish. What about practice?
Ugh, yes. Rehearse with purpose. And this means much more than just quietly reading your speech to yourself. You need to practice it under conditions that mimic the real thing, even if just slightly stressful. Definitely rehearse out loud, multiple times. This builds muscle memory for your mouth and your brain. Try recording yourself using your phone's voice memo app. Yes, it can be painful to listen back. We all hate the sound of our own voice. But it is probably the single best way to spot where you tend to ramble, where your energy dips, or where you consistently maybe get a bit lost or stuck. And if you possibly can, present to another human being. A friend, a colleague, your dog, doesn't matter. Just having another presence changes the dynamic and forces you to adapt, helping you anticipate potential sticking points.
Good tips. And what about right before, like minutes before you go on? Is there anything you can do then, like a pre-game ritual?
Absolutely. Think of it exactly like an athlete's warm-up routine. It's about managing your physiology. Before any important engagement, try this. First, find a quiet space if possible. Even a bathroom stall works for a couple of minutes. Second, practice some deep box breathing. This is super simple. Inhale slowly for a count of 4. Hold your breath gently for 4. Exhale slowly for 4. Hold the breath out for 4. Repeat this cycle for just 2 or 3 minutes. It really helps calm the nervous system. Third, maybe try a power pose. Stand with your hands on your hips, chest out, chin up for about 1 minute. There's research, like from social psychologist Amy Cuddy, suggesting this can actually boost feelings of confidence and reduce stress hormones, even if it feels a bit silly at first. And fourth, super simple but often overlooked. Hydrate. Drink a glass of water. A dry mouth can really heighten feelings of panic and make speaking physically harder.
Box breathing, power pose, water. Got it. Simple but powerful. Anything else on the prevention front?
One last thing. Know your environment. If you can, get to the room early. Understand the projector, the microphone. Click through your slides yourself once or twice. Stand at the podium or wherever you'll be speaking from. This familiarity reduces your cognitive load because your brain isn't trying to process a brand new, unfamiliar environment at the same time as trying to deliver a complex message. It allows you to dedicate your full mental bandwidth to your actual communication, not to figuring out where the light switch is.
That makes perfect sense. Reduce the unknowns.
So wrapping up here, the core message really is that losing your train of thought, it's not a question of if it will happen, but pretty much when. It happens to literally everyone. CEOs, top professors, even presidents giving major speeches. We've all seen it. It is an unavoidable part of the complex, sometimes beautiful and, sometimes messy human act of communication. It's not a personal failure. It's just a predictable biological and psychological event.
Right. And the empowering thing is, now you, our listeners, have a complete toolkit to manage that predictable event with real grace, confidence, and strategic poise.
Yeah.
You've got the honest pause of, let me collect my thoughts. You've got the specific retrieval tools on the tip of my tongue. You have the strategic reset of, let me rephrase that, the really cool collaborative power of turning to your audience with a question, and that grounding safety net of recapping your last point. 5 solid options.
And even more than just the recovery tools, you also now have that preventative framework. You know how to build a more resilient, more confident speaking style right from the ground up. It starts with abandoning those fragile scripts in favor of robust island notes. It involves purposeful rehearsal that goes beyond just reading, and it includes actively managing your own physiological state before you even start speaking.
So here's the final thought for you to take away. The next time you're speaking and you feel that familiar cold void starting to open up in your mind, do not panic. Please do not falter. Instead, take that calm breath we talked about. Make eye contact with someone. And consciously choose your tool from the kit we discussed today. This is no longer just a moment of weakness to be feared. It is now actually a chance for you to demonstrate that you are a communicator who is so skilled, so self-aware, and so in command of the room, that even a moment of perfectly normal human fallibility can be transformed right before their eyes into a masterclass in professional grace. Go forth and speak with poise.